So, this is Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind Crockett, a tall tale retold and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. This book was published back in 1995, but it's still a good one. And the publisher is William Morrow and Company. So I appreciate the fact that they are allowing us to read stories during this pandemic time. Please don't sue me. I'm just trying to educate our kids. Okay, so here is Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind Crockett. About 200 years ago, a remarkable infant came into the world, beaming like a sunrise. Now, did you hear that? A simile? Okay, I won't interrupt anymore. Having 9 sons already, her parents were overjoyed to welcome their very first daughter. "Howdy, I'm Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind," shouted the baby in a voice as loud as a blast of buckshot. Her parents were astonished. "You can talk," they cried. "I can out-talk, out-grin, out-scream, out-swim, and outrun any baby in all of Kentucky," she announced. "You're amazing," exclaimed her parents. Their sons, however, had been hoping for another brother, and they did not agree. "She's a loudmouth and a liar," said one. "Everybody knows babies can't run," scoffed another. "Especially baby girls," added the oldest. "She couldn't outrun a loaf of bread," sneered the youngest. "I'm ready to try," cried their sister. "Come on, let's race to the top of the mountain and back. On your mark and say go!" And Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind took off like a cheetah. Sally Ann blazed up the mountain, shooting past a gang of racing rabbits as if they were dozing tortoises. On her way back down, she met her brothers, who were just beginning the climb. "I'll see you at the finish line," she called. When Sally Ann's brothers finally returned, they collapsed in the shade for a nap. "Come on, let's have a swimming race," cried Sally Ann. But her exhausted brothers had lost interest in sports. "We quit," they cried. Sally Ann dove underwater, and went fishing with otters. When an hour had passed and she didn't surface, her brothers became concerned. Has she drowned? They all wondered. Suddenly, Sally Ann rocketed into view, juggling 14 trout. "Fire up the grill," she cried. "It's dinner time." Sally Ann's brothers finally admitted that their parents were right. "She's amazing," they agreed. Sally Ann continued to astonish folks throughout her whole childhood. When she was just 1 year old, she beat the fastest runners in the whole state. And at 4, she flipped the strongest arm wrestlers. And at 7, she was the whole champion tug-of-war team. Just her. On her 8th birthday, Sally Ann decided she was a grown-up and she was ready for new challenges. "I am off to find the frontier," she said. For several years, she lived with different animals and learned their habits. She loved life in the wilderness during every season, except winter. Finally, the fierce cold drove her underground to hibernate with the bears. Deep in a cave that bristled with stalactites and stalagmites, Sally Ann snuggled close to a large, warm grizzly bear. Suddenly, the bear awakened, and Sally Ann, she felt a blast of terrible heat. She felt a blast of terrible heat from his great oven-like mouth. It was clear that the bear was more interested in a snack than a roommate. But before the monster could swallow her, Sally Ann stunned him with a grin as bright as a flash of lightning. If this was a movie, it would probably go, "Ooh." Over backward he went, rolling among those razor-sharp stalactites and stalagmites that skinned him from his ears to his toes. Naked and embarrassed, the creature scrambled out of sight. "Ooh, that was a close shave for both of us," cried Sally Ann. She wrapped herself in the bear's fur and set off in search of whole new adventures. That bearskin kept Sally Ann cozy for many winters, and she grew tall and strong. But as the years rolled by, she became tired of living alone. One day she came upon a very unhappy fella who had dozed off while leaning against a tree and awakened to find himself stuck. 2 eagles were adding to his misery by yanking out his hair to line their nests. "You're in a predicament, mister," exclaimed Sally Ann. "Let me give you a hand." So Sally Ann tried to shoo away those eagles, but they fought her like flapping furies. So she let loose a wild scream that blasted the color off their heads and their tails, and it left them as placid as pigeons. "Well, star-spangled my banner," cried Sally Thunder Ann Whirlwind. "I just invented bald eagles." Unfortunately, the fella that Sally Ann was trying to rescue had been knocked unconscious by her scream. Quickly, she hauled 6 rattlers out of a nearby snake den, knotted them together, and lassoed a branch. One sharp tug, and his head popped free. He's kind of handsome," thought Sally Ann. "I'll freshen up and look my best before I nurse him back to health." Sally Ann grabbed a hornet's nest for a bonnet and fogged herself with the perfume of a passing skunk. Then she heaved her patient into the creek. Just as she expected, the minute he hit that icy water, he perked right up. "My heart's pounding like a buffalo stampede," he sputtered. "So's mine," confessed Sally Ann. "Well, my name's David Crockett. Marry me," he exclaimed. Sally Ann was astonished to learn that she had rescued the most famous woodsman in America. Lightning flashed between them, and they fell head over heels in love. The happy couple celebrated their wedding with a batch of bald eagle eggnog. Then they settled down in a farmhouse with a fine view of the Mississippi River. When their first child, Hardstone, was born, all 3 of them whooped for joy. "Let's have 30 more!" cried Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind Crockett. Not long afterwards, a city slicker stopped by and asked Davy if he would be willing to run in November. Thinking that a foot race was being organized, Davy said, "Well, sign me up." Later, Davy was flabbergasted to discover that he had agreed to run for the United States Congress. What more, he was elected. As soon as Davy left for D.C., Sally Ann started having trouble with alligators. And in just a second, we'll read part 2.